Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome to week 3 of this year's college football season, and of course, week 3 of the Carla and Crappy Show. I'm Crappy. That's Carla. Hi, Carla.
Hi. How are you?
I'm all about baseball today.
I see that.
After last weekend, I might not be as much about college football as I would prefer to be at this point of the year. But Miami just won their 21st straight game this afternoon, beating Detroit at home, and this is a magnificent thing. That is, of course, the all-time longest winning streak in American League history. And
it's old enough to drink. So cheers.
And I am. So.
We both are.
So yeah, I will probably get to the other side of that coin in just a second. We will start with we had another entertaining weekend last weekend. I of course was in Columbus in a game that was perhaps not as entertaining as I had hoped. But I will start, Carla, by asking you, and maybe we just kind of turn this into a thing. What is what was your thing? What was your one thing?
What was my one thing
from last weekend?
Well, first of all, I take everything and go like that, right? Because
pretty much.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I mean, everything we predicted last week didn't happen. Yeah, welcome to football program. Right? Yeah.
Right.
And that's the fun of week 2, because we think we everybody thinks they get it all figured out, and then something happens, and you're just like, wait, what? And I have to admit that I kind of felt that way watching your game. It didn't make a lot of sense. Like watching it. I mean, Baker Mayfield.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean he's good and real good, and I mean he was dropping balls into places that he should had. There was no space. I mean, just that was kind of ridiculous. So, but kudos to Oklahoma for doing what we didn't think they could do. Really,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean that may be the biggest takeaway from that game is that Baker Mayfield's really, really good.
Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, reading now they're talking 3-way kind of thing for the Heisman at this point. All of a sudden, people are giving Baker Mayfield no, really, he's the best player in college football right now. And I'm like, well, but yeah, have you seen Lamar Jackson lately? So it's interesting that it's that early in the season. I'm trying to. We just had a good time flipping back and forth between games on Sunday night or on Saturday night. Because there was just so much going on. And I fell asleep before the end of the amazing game, which was Wazoo coming back in double overtime to beat Boise.
Right.
Triple overtime. It was triple overtime they beat Boise.
Yes.
I fell asleep in the second half. And woke up in the morning to I'm sorry, AJ. I fell asleep during the second half. I'm sorry. My Pac-12 After Dark reputation is now.
Maybe we could make AJ just like the Pac-12 After Dark correspondent.
I think that needs to be a thing because he's the only one of us that can manage to stay awake long enough to watch.
I'm 50 years old. I'm not staying up to watch this.
And I got to get up on Sunday morning, so
No, I'm not. Let's just be honest here.
AJ, you're in.
We'll work on those details.
We will. But no, it was just a really interesting weekend of college football. I can't really put my finger on anything in particular that was kind of surprised me more than anything else. But Clemson did what they were supposed to do. It was just kind of run for the course. But yeah, the Oklahoma win was probably the one that. And the other thing was Georgia. Jake Fromm, welcome to the SEC. That was a heck of a performance from that freshman to go up and again what we said. Winning in South Bend as a freshman is next to impossible, and especially for a team that hasn't been north of the Mason-Dixon line since who knows how long to play a game. But to go up in that environment and handle it as well as he did, impressive for a freshman. And like I posted on Saturday night when I was kind of doing the brain dump on our Facebook page, does Georgia now have a quarterback situation on its hands? Because, Jacob Eason was a pretty darn good quarterback before he got hurt. And now all of a sudden you got this freshman who's seeing significant playing time, who's kind of earned the respect of his team. When Eason comes back, what happens? That's a really interesting situation to watch.
You got to go with the guy, right?
But who's your guy?
If you went on the road Notre Dame,
right?
Got to go with that guy.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see how that all shakes out. So Kirby Smart's got a challenge on his hands.
My one thing, watching Ohio State and Oklahoma in person, I'm less, as an Ohio State fan, I'm less concerned about the defense. Ran into a really good quarterback, having a really good day. And then we know that the defensive backfield is inexperienced. We talked about that, I think, both weeks so far this season. The thing that I am most concerned about after that is not the defense, not what Oklahoma was able to do. I think I said in week one, if Ohio State has reliable wideouts who can stretch the field, and we saw that on a couple plays in Indiana, and now I'm concerned that that's just moments of weakness against a team that doesn't have the depth that Ohio State does, and in the second half can't keep up. Oklahoma does have the depth and can keep up, and in terms of offense, what I've seen so far, Ohio State's offense feels a lot like it did last year, which that's not a good thing. A lot of people are hauling about JT Barrett. Again, guys, JT is not the problem. He doesn't have anyone to throw the ball to, maybe some of the youngsters will develop. Some of these players we've been waiting on, as Ohio State fans, we've been waiting to see something from them for a long time. And there are the couple weeks. I mean, against Army, you don't figure that's more. Army's more of a challenge for the defense than it is for the offense. Right. Next game is UNLV. Game after that is Rutgers. So there's a little time, and right. Just as a way of reassurance, maybe for me as much as anybody else. There are 3 games there before this stuff gets serious, and Maryland could actually be a more serious game than Ohio State fans are used to. So that's right. Coming down the pike, but that's 4 games away.
And the interesting thing was watching that game on TV and watching, and you're right about the JT Bear is not the problem. I wonder if it's settling into the new scheme with Kevin Wilson is a problem, because there were a couple times that he just looked over to the sideline and he just had that look on his face, like, what do you want me to do? Like a little bit of confusion, a little bit like decisions that he made that we didn't see him make last year or lack thereof. It was a little bit surprising, really.
To be honest, I'm not seeing a whole lot in terms of scheme. I'm not seeing a whole lot that's different between last year and this year. Urban is a notorious control freak. True. And I'm not seeing the stuff from Ohio State's offense this season, and again, so it's really, really early, that I saw when we would play Indiana over the past couple years. And I know, Urban's not going to Urban has an identity that he wants to maintain, especially at Ohio State, and it's going to be running football first. It is going to be a power rushing game. That is always going to be a component of this. Although, but Indiana's rushing numbers were solid over the last several seasons when Kevin Wilson was there. So I'm not. That's the thing that I don't. I think it's easy to understand that JT Barrett is not. Does not have the trust in the guys that he needs to throw the ball to, and that is making him hesitant. That was an issue for much of last season. I am not, and I don't know if this is a chicken or the egg thing. Do the wideouts need to develop before we see Kevin Wilson's offense, or do we need to see more of Kevin Wilson's offense before the wideouts develop? I'm not. I don't know the answer to that question. Hopefully, Ohio State fans, we will find that out in the next 3 games before stuff gets really serious again. We of course have. This is an interesting week. There aren't. The first 2 weeks of the season were spectacular in terms of ranked matchups and interesting stuff. Not quite as many of those here in week 3, but we've come up with some interesting ones. Starting with, I guess you could call this interesting. I'm going to hedge my bets here a little bit.
Interesting is a good word.
Okay, interesting is fine. Interesting, sure. Number 23, Tennessee at number 24, Florida. Florida is favored by 5. I'm going to preface this by saying Butch Jones, Tennessee's head coach, said this game will set the tone for the SEC East this season. And unfortunately, he's probably right.
With the exception of Georgia, I think he is right.
Georgia Georgia is an obvious potential exception. But
Yeah.
what do you
Well,
can you stay awake for this game, Carla?
Can I stay away for this game? Yes, because it's at 2:30 in the afternoon, so Central Time. So
Okay, good.
Yeah. So it's the CBS afternoon game. So okay, that's good. Well, first of all, kudos to the University of Florida and Gainesville for being able to host this game.
Absolutely.
That was obviously that was a big concern with the hurricane coming through last week, but they determined on Tuesday of this week that the game is going to be played in Gainesville. The other thing I found today that was kind of interesting is that some of the security crew from Knoxville is actually going to go to Gainesville to kind of man the stadium a little bit to offer a helping hand, which I think is a very nice gesture.
That's really cool. Yeah, I had not heard that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's going to be a unique environment. I think that's kind of one of those things that you can't discount in this game. This is a heated rivalry. I'm happy it's going to be played in the Swamp, but you've got to think that like all these other things that have been going on lately, with Florida in particular, it's gonna be a different UT Florida game this year. I think. Mm-hmm. I think it's just gonna feel different because of the circumstances. Florida's game last week was canceled, which means that the last time we saw Florida was in that abysmal 33-17 loss to Michigan, where
not even that close.
Because 14 of those points were scored on defense. Yeah. 11 rushing yards in the game for the Gators, 154 yards of total offense, and 3 points. Yeah,
that's an excusable quarter, maybe.
Right? Yeah, not an entire game against a Michigan team that Michigan is look pretty good in that game, but still, Florida really needed last week's game, and it didn't happen because of the weather. They canceled that game, and so this is going to be an interesting test for the Gators at home. From what I've seen, they're going to start Franks at quarterback, even though they pulled him in the second half.
Okay.
Of that game against Michigan. So that's going to be a little bit interesting. And then because of the way those suspensions were handed out at the beginning of the year, because last week's game was canceled, Florida still has 9 players suspended for this game, including Antonio Callaway, their best wide receiver. So are we going to really see anything different out of this Florida offense, if you can call it an offense at this point? Leaves me, there's some pretty big questions there, whether or not they're actually going to, because they didn't have a regular practice schedule. They were just like everybody else, hunkering down for the hurricane, and now they're, trying to put things back together on campus. That's a really interesting situation. Tennessee, on the other hand, this is a team that needed double overtime to beat the triple option of Georgia Tech in week 1, and didn't look good in that first half at all in that game, and kind of needed some interesting coaching decisions from the Georgia Tech sideline to be able to win that game in double overtime. And last week they did what they were supposed to do at home against in Knoxville against Indiana State, that was well overmatched in that game. John Kelly solidified the role as the lead running back, but there still seems to be a little bit of question at quarterback, even though Quentin Dormady is kind of seems to have solidified himself as being the starter, and he will start on Saturday. But there's not 100% confidence there, which that's not totally surprising. But at the same time, you got to think that they need to kind of settle things down a bit. But at the same time, they got the extra game in. It's a heated rivalry. They won this game last year. But the best line of all this, so I was reading a bunch of stuff on this game today. I was flipping through a bunch of sports websites. And my favorite line about this game came from Cody McClure from Saturday Down South, who says, "Florida can't score and Tennessee can't stop anybody," is how he describes the game.
Can you have, it's like negative scores? Can you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Safeties?
There's some physics stuff here we have to work out. I'm not sure how that's going to go.
So Florida can't score, but Tennessee can't stop anybody. That still favors Tennessee. And even though I think they're right?
Yes.
So I take the under. And I think it's going to be an interesting is a good word for this game. It's going to be interesting. Is it going to be entertaining? Probably not. And don't tell my husband, who is a Gator and went to Florida, that my glass has the state of Tennessee on it, and it's an orange drink.
Ish.
Okay, it's peach.
Peach, yeah, that works.
I think UT wins this game 2 years in a row. It'd be the first time since the 1970s that this has happened. But I think the Volunteers go down and get a win in the Swamp.
Okay. You can tell Mr. Fox that I'm going to disagree with you, sorta.
Okay.
Sorta. I don't have. It's tough to have a really strong feeling for this game because we know so little about the Gators. I need to look stuff up. And because they've just had the one game, and because it was such an awful thing for them, especially offensively, the team's leading rusher, Mark Thompson, has 13 yards on this season,
which is more than the team had in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I'm not even sure how to quantify what Florida has done so far this year. They're in a tough spot because the game was canceled. I'm not sure that a whole lot more about Tennessee. The win against on the road against Georgia Tech, not impressive. I mean, I guess it's a road win, so sure that counts for something.
Well, technically, it was neutral site.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes.
Technically.
And then I wasn't aware that Indiana State had a football team. So that's there's that. They do what they did with their, and it's just even with an ostensibly difficult game and a cupcake game, and they're just sort of 64th in scoring offense, and they're 27th nationally in scoring, but that's mostly they scored a lot, but they gave up only 2 fewer points against Georgia Tech, and you do what you do against Indiana State, and it's just like I don't know. I'm doing probably what the odds makers have done here, in that you look at this as sort of a few extra points to the home team just because they're at home. But boy, if this is the game that sets the tone. Maybe we'll have high hopes for Georgia, because if this is the game that sets the tone for the SEC East, we're not looking for a whole lot of fun out of the SEC East this year. I will, however, I'm going to even pick a score on this one. Florida wins at home, 12-10. 12-10 is how this.
More field goals.
That could be. Or what would that? That would be 6 safeties. Is that possible? I don't know.
A touchdown, a field goal, and a safety.
That's like a Gordie Howe hat trick. That's not bad. Next up, a legit good game,
yes.
A legit interesting game, and one actually that maybe even you hear in week 3, a game that decides the ACC Atlantic. As you look down the line, number 3 Clemson at number 14 Louisville. Clemson is favored by 3. What do you think?
This is by far the best game of the week now that Florida State and Miami aren't playing. If that game was happening, then this would be a stellar week. But they've moved that game due to weather conditions. So this is a really interesting game because you have a Louisville team playing at home, and that atmosphere, no joke. I mean, Clemson has a great atmosphere at home too, but Louisville's atmosphere at home is pretty legit. Mm-hmm. They have some diehard fans there, and Lamar Jackson looking great so far early this season. He's easily looking like the Heisman winner that he is. But there's a couple interesting things here. Even though Lamar Jackson has looked great, there's a couple causes for concern with Louisville, and one of them is the fact that Lamar Jackson is still the team's leading rusher after week 2. Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily, he's a mobile quarterback. You like that. But at the same time, do you really want your quarterback to be your team's leading rusher heading into a game like this?
Ohio State fans know the answer to that question is no.
Is no, right. Yeah. So that's kind of, something to kind of keep your eyes open about, that they haven't really established a run game beyond Lamar scrambling. The other thing is that it's slightly surprising. Louisville's actually kind of had to work really hard for wins in weeks 1 and 2 over Purdue and North Carolina. Now, okay, Purdue's an improved team. Everybody's like, sign me up. I'm on the Jeff Brom bandwagon at Purdue. And I get it after watching that Purdue team in week 1 against Louisville. But Carolina,
you didn't watch them last weekend against the Ohio University Bobcats?
I didn't see that game. That game was on Friday, wasn't it?
It was on Friday, and I mean, OU's not a bad this sort of upper third back team. Purdue playing at home. Look solid.
They look much improved over the last couple of years that we've seen from a Purdue team, and you got. I mean, yeah, it's not saying a lot. It's Purdue, but at the same time, like, it was nice to see Purdue extremely. I mean, I was rooting for Purdue against Louisville when they were still in that game in the third quarter. It was just kind of like, why not? Let's throw this whole thing up in the first week. So is it like super cause for concern for Louisville? I don't think so, but it is kind of a head scratcher heading into such a big game like this. The other head scratcher for Louisville was the same problem they had last year was defense and kind of buttoning up their defense. Their defense has been allowing 372 yards per game, which isn't overly excessive, but here's the number that makes it really kind of concerning, is that most of that is through the air. So they still have the same secondary issues that they had last year. That doesn't seem to have improved against two teams that really, you can't really say have a hard, like, air attack. Like, those two offenses seem to be a little bit more balanced. So three things that are kind of head scratchers there, and they're going up against a Clemson defense that, my God, sacked Auburn's quarterback 11 times last week.
Yes.
I mean, that poor kid. I mean, that offensive line needs to buy him at least 3 steak dinners this year, after that performance, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is one of the best defensive fronts in the country, going up against a mobile quarterback, and we saw this last year with Clemson and Louisville. I mean, Lamar tried to win the game on his own last year, and he almost did it. But there was a stop late in the game on like 3rd and 3 or something like that they stopped him when he tried to escape out of there, and that's what kind of finally decided the game. But this is Clemson's offense doesn't seem to have missed a step so far, even with losing Deshaun Watson. I mean, Kelly Bryant's looked great in the first couple of games. Their offense is putting up 473 yards per game, and a lot of that is through the air, which is where Louisville's defense still hasn't figured things out.
Right.
So all that together, this is going to be one heck of an entertaining game. I still think the winner is Clemson. I don't see enough improvement in Louisville to be able to overcome that defensive front, and the fact that Louisville can't stop the Clemson air attack, which is still, if Clemson had switched and gone more ground game, then yeah, I think that levels the playing field a little bit, and we see a really, really close game here. But I don't know. I like Clemson on the road in this one, and I think it could be a little bit bigger than what everybody's kind of expecting, unless that Louisville defense can somehow pull a rabbit out of its hat this week to be able to stop that passing attack.
Okay. I mean, you talked about Clemson's, especially defensive line. I recall these guys from the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, you know a little something about
I have some up close and personal experience. And not a lot of turnover there. That unit is still elite, and even against a guy who's already got one Heisman Trophy, that's something that's going to slow him down. That's more than a speed bump. Maybe as agile as Lamar Jackson is, maybe not double digit sacks like they did against Auburn, but that you can count on that defense, especially the front seven, to slow Lamar Jackson down. The kind of wild card here is as I go back and kind of look at highlight videos from the first couple of weeks, I'm impressed with Kelly Bryant at Clemson.
Yeah.
He doesn't. No one's going to mistake him for Deshaun Watson yet, and he doesn't have to be Deshaun Watson yet, especially with the defense that the Tigers have. But he's a similar guy. The passing game seems to be sharp. They're not asking him to do too much. He may have to do a little bit more this week than he's had to do so far. But he's also Clemson's leading rusher so far. And you mentioned the quarterback as a leading rusher thing. It's a little bit scary. But this is sort of in the mold of what Clemson did last year. Deshaun Watson gained a lot, accomplished a lot running the ball. So this is an offense that the Tigers are comfortable with. I think a combination of those two things. Kelly Bryant has stepped up and is doing a nice job of running that offense and doing what Watson did a year ago. And that just monster D line, especially in the front seven. That's going to be enough to sort of tip this in Clemson's favor. And definitely one thing we haven't mentioned this word yet this season. This is not a Clemsoning situation.
No.
So I see this as a win for the Tigers on the road, and that's going to be a big deal for them. And it kind of keeps them in the conversation for obviously very early for playoff contention.
But is this a division game? I mean, really, when you look at the rest of the division, with Florida State, kind of, we don't know what Florida State is anymore.
You have no idea what Florida State's going to do. And
right.
That's the wild card for the division. Yes. But I mean, it really could be. It really could be.
Week 3. Who knew?
Yeah.
Playing for division title, week 3.
AJ, I hope you're paying attention. Our third game of the week here, we are talking about Ole Miss at number 37. I had to go back through the also receiving votes part. At number 37, California. Ole Miss is favored on the road by 3.5 in this hashtag Pac-12 After Dark game. What do you think?
So first of all, it's not truly Pac-12 After Dark if one of the teams is not in the Pac-12. But
True.
Pac-12 After Dark time slot should be just as entertaining of a game as we got last week, I would have to believe, because that wasn't technically a Pac-12 After Dark game either. Boise is still in the Mountain West, or whatever conference that is now. Is it still the Mountain West? I think. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, this has the makings of being a really, really entertaining game, and I really wish I don't know, maybe I'll caffeinate late in the day or something so I can stay up and watch this one, because it's on ESPN, it's not on Pac-12 Network, so go to a wide audience. But man, this is an entertaining game. Cal has started its year. Tale of two teams, really. They flew across the country to go to North Carolina. We've now mentioned Carolina twice in this show.
Right.
And poor Carolina, what a heck of a way to start the season, right? They host Cal, and then they have to play Louisville. I mean, really? So poor Carolina is an 0-2 with that kind of start to the season. But Cal goes all the way across the country for the game was a noon Eastern start. So no rest for the weary to go over there to that, and they've got the win on the road. That was I know it's North Carolina, but still, that's a nice win to go all the way across the country and get an early win like that. But last week, I don't know whether it was a hangover from the trip, not enough time to practice. I don't know. They actually had to rally to beat Weber State in the fourth quarter.
Ouch.
At home.
Yeah.
At home. And that's a head scratcher, because the win at Carolina is a nice win, and then you come back and do that, and it's like, really?
Clemsoning.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, Cal's got a case of the Clemsonings. They're still trying to figure out an offense, apparently. Running back Patrick Laird, however, has been the standout. I mean, he had 191 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. But the AP story, I love going to AP stories to see, because they've gotten really, really interesting with the way that they post those now about things that they learned and what's the takeaway from this game for both teams. And the takeaway from Cal, from the Associated Press, was that there were secondary issues throughout the game for Cal. That was the takeaway.
Okay.
They allowed 505 yards per game so far this year on defense, which is a lot.
Okay.
Especially when one of your teams is Weber State. 326 of them through the air. So yeah, I'd say the secondary has some issues.
Qualifies as secondary issues, yes.
Yeah, so maybe the offense, okay, they got a running back, but they've got secondary problems. Ole Miss is the polar opposite of this team. They've been putting up 40 points or so per game, pretty consistent in their first 2 weeks against 2 cupcakes. Did what they were supposed to do. Got a nice quarterback now, at least on appearance from the first 2 games. Shea Patterson threw for just shy of 500 yards last week, which was a single game school record, and 5 touchdowns against UT Martin. So nice stats for him. Yet at the same time, the team trailed in this game. Ole Miss trailed in this game until the waning moments of the first half. They had to score a touchdown in the last minute of the second quarter to actually have a 1-point lead at the half.
Right.
17-16 at the half. So that's another head scratcher, right? 2 cupcakes, same thing. And the other thing that Ole Miss has to do is they have to be better at stopping the run. That was another one of those takeaways from the AP article that they just – so okay, so if you look at that, so you have a Cal team with secondary issues going against a Ole Miss quarterback that threw for almost 500 yards last week and 5 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an Ole Miss team that can't stop the run going against a running back that had almost 200 yards last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Which means there's going to be a whole lot of points scored in this game.
Yes.
So first thing, take the over. The over-under, I looked, it's 72. Take
72.
The over.
I was going to, yeah, I have that in my notes too.
Especially because it's Pac-12 after dark.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen.
So you're taking the over, definitely.
I'm taking the over, Pac-12 after dark. This is going to be a wildly entertaining game if you love points, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Team that has the ball last wins. I mean, really, that's what it could come down to, right? Whoever has last possession might win this game. I don't know. I'm going to lean Ole Miss just because I like the way that offense is setting up, and if their biggest concern right now is stopping the run, if they can, that's something that you can kind of tend to fix or patch in a week.
You can, yes.
Fixing a secondary a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm going to lean Ole Miss in this game, but man, caffeinate, do whatever you have to do to try to stay up and watch this one, because I think this might be the most entertaining game of the weekend. It really might.
Okay. You can tell which one of us is the former sports writer. That would be the one that looks at Ole Miss versus Cal and talks about defense.
Right?
And there's
no defense in this game at all. None.
What I have in my notes here is like, I'm not mentioning any defensive statistics because they don't matter. They don't matter. The game, as you mentioned, the over-under for this game is 72. As we mentioned before, take the over because this is going to be insane. And I think what I think this is going to come down to, there are a couple things that I'm looking at here. Cal in recent history has had solid offense. They move the ball, they score. And you kind of get in situations where you have to outscore people to win, and often they can do that because they tend to score a bunch. Ole Miss not having a defense is a very un-SEC-ish thing to say, but in this case, I don't know that's going to matter. I mean, if you look at a couple kind of evenly matched. At least in terms of statistics, relatively evenly matched offenses. I think what happens here, even if we have to mention the defenses, I would expect even a middle of the road SEC team to have better athletes, to have a little bit more depth than Cal Berkeley would have. I would also look a little bit. I would take a look at there are some legit places in the Pac-12 that are tough places to play. Certainly, Oregon is that way. The Coliseum with Southern Cal is that way. I'm not sure that Cal is that. So I'm gonna take those two things. I'm gonna take better athletes at the SEC school. I'm gonna take maybe not so tough home field advantage, making quote signs there, and I'm gonna say Ole Miss wins this, 57 to 50. I don't know. I have no idea what the score is going to be, but it's going to be something like that. It's going to be ridiculous, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Yes. So, Carla, do the Indians have a shot at breaking the 26-game all-time Major League Baseball win streak record?
Well, there's always a chance, right? I mean, there's always a chance. That's a lot to ask for. Although, I mean, when you're at 21, maybe
just a couple more.
Maybe
we will see how that goes. We will see.
It's baseball season now again, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll see if my Buckeyes can recover against Army. We will see how all three of these games go. And Carla, we will see you next week. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Go Tribe. I will. That's a bandwagon I'm willing to jump on.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because I used to watch Cleveland games. I grew up in Erie, so we saw more Indians games growing up than we did Pirates games because welcome to TV rights, right?
Yeah.
So yes, go Tribe.
Thank you, and thank you guys for watching. It's been fun talking to you, and we enjoy the games, and we will see you back here next week. Bye.